Hello everyone and welcome to DC Central, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down and reviewing Arrow Season 7 Episode 20, otherwise entitled Confessions, and if you have not seen this episode make sure you do so before proceeding with this review as it will be filled with spoilers. I have to say, I was so excited going into this episode because a few weeks ago, thanks to set photos from Canada Graphs, we found out that Colton Haynes would be returning to this show and to the season as Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, in this episode. And obviously we have had Roy this season. He has been in the flash forwards, but this is going to be when he was going to be returning into the present day storyline, and that got me very, very excited about this episode. And how did it fare? Well, let's find out. What I liked about this episode, and this is kind of a controversial opinion because it seems to be like this episode is kind of very 50-50 with people. It seems like some people really liked it and some people really didn't. But the true crime narrative, like that was kind of what they were going for with this episode. They had that in the synopsis. They kind of went for a true crime show kind of tone and feel and kind of setup for this episode. The way it kind of takes place, the way it's set out, the way it's structured, it feels very much like a true crime show. You know, if you've ever watched anything, you know, sort of along the lines of NCIS or anything maybe sort of like Criminal Minds, that kind of thing, it kind of follows that kind of structure and feel. And I actually really like this, the way it all takes place. Like, it completely starts off with a flash forward, and then it flashes back, and we get to see how every member of Team Arrow is kind of interviewed, and then we get to see their point of view, what they experienced, and how the event played out through their eyes, and how more and more things are slowly revealed to the audience and to the characters. I actually really enjoyed the way this was done, because again, it was different, it was fresh, it was not your typical Arrow episode from a storytelling standpoint, and I thought that that was interesting. It kept this, you know, it kept it fresh, it kept it feeling different, kind of like episode 12 of this season, which obviously episode 12 was a very different situation. That was the 150th episode of Arrow, and they did like a documentary style thing, but again, that was like a documentary style episode, and this was like a true crime style episode. It was just something a bit different, and again, fresh and interesting. And as I mentioned, Roy Harper was back in this episode as back as Arsenal. We get to see him suited up. I have to say, I loved all this. I thought this was great. Like, Roy, honestly, is one of my favourite Arrow characters of all time. So to have him back in the present day, I'm really excited about. I know he's going to be back for the rest of the season, and hopefully he will be back in Season 8 as a regular as well, because that is what we need. We need Roy back on the show as much as possible, and if he's going to be around for the final season, then that is definitely a positive. And for this episode, I just loved having Roy back on the team, interacting with Oliver again, with Diggle, with Felicity, and even, you know, interacting with new team members like Dinah and Renee. It was just really nice just to have Roy back on Team Arrow. Like I said, I really appreciated the storytelling in this episode. I really liked it. My only thing is, and I hate it when Arrow does this. It does it all the time, and it's always done it. And it's when anytime there's a flashback of any kind, or you can even relate this to the flash forwards as well, they always put just a really horrible, bland filter over the top of it. I mean, this can literally go for like any episode of Arrow, this complaint, but it's really annoying because it looks ugly. Like, it looks really, really ugly. And given the fact that Arrow is not an ugly looking show, you know, to make it look like that, especially in this episode, like, it had like a really like horrible brown filter on top of it. It just looked horrible. So I really didn't like that. Like I say, they've always done this in the flashbacks throughout, you know, the first 5 seasons. They're doing it this season with the flash forwards. It's just, I always hate it when Arrow puts a filter over things, and it's just, I know they're doing it to differentiate, but I think they can trust that the audience is smart enough to be able to tell the difference. Now, one interesting little beat we got in this episode was kind of an explanation for Roy's raging out. If you remember a few episodes ago, we saw Roy in the flash forwards get very, very agitated and very angry at a member of the SCPD when he was being interrogated, to the point where he actually ended up killing somebody. He was killing that cop just out of pure rage, and a lot of us were kind of wondering, you know, what's going on there? How did that happen? I think a lot of us thought that it was to do with the Mirakuru, like maybe the Mirakuru inside of Roy had not fully gone away, and that's what was causing it. But in this episode, we actually get an explanation. It turns out, after we found out that these 2 cops who had been mysteriously killed, that's kind of what this whole episode is surrounding, is these 2 cops who were killed, and we actually find out that Roy was the one who did it, Oliver basically puts the pieces together and figures out that, yes, the last time we saw you, you left with Thea and Nyssa to go and destroy the Lazarus Pits. You died and then got resurrected. So Oliver puts the pieces together. Yeah, Roy, you were killed, and Thea brought you back to life via the Lazarus Pit, and you are now experiencing bloodlust, which, if you remember, we've seen Sarah experience that. We've had Thea herself experience that. So I thought this was very interesting to bring bloodlust back into it, like this really big thing that happened in Season 3, to kind of bring that back into the show, and to give it to a character like Roy. Again, it was an explanation that we were kind of all waiting for. And I think that it was actually interesting that, you know, Roy went off on this mission with Thea and Nyssa, and he actually died. And now he's been resurrected via the Lazarus Pit, and now he's experiencing bloodlust. And because of the Mirakuru, like the kind of cure that Sarah used, is kind of ineffective on him. So I think that's interesting. And I'm very interested to see how much this is going to kind of impact Roy going forward on the show in the present day. Obviously, we know based on the flash forwards that at some point he exiles himself to Lian Yu. So what's he gonna do? You know, that causes him that's so bad that causes him to have to exile himself Yoda style to Lian Yu. Like, I don't know. I'm excited to see that though. And again, just to get that explanation as to what's going on with him in the future was a nice touch. However, this whole cop killing thing was a complete misdirect, as we all had it coming, that it was framed, like they were all framed by Emeco. So Emeco basically staged this whole thing so that Team Arrow would basically get into trouble with the SCPD to give her time. And I mean, this kind of makes Emeco now the big bad of the season. And I guess this is kind of where they're going with this character now. I have to say, I think this is a bad character turn. I don't like this. We were all kind of fearing this, that Emeco was going to kind of evolve into the big bad of the season after she killed Dante, especially because we all thought Dante was going to be the big bad. I have to say, I don't like this, especially because to me it feels very apparent that the writers have kind of not been sure what to do with Emeco, because when she first showed up, obviously in the first half of the season, she was the new Green Arrow, she was the mystery character of the season, and then after she was revealed, it seemed like she was a pretty decent sort, it seemed like she was okay, and then we found out about Dante and the Ninth Circle and things like that, and then she kind of turned into a villain. So like I say, it kind of feels like maybe they weren't. I don't think they were going to go in the villain direction for Emeco. I really don't. But I feel like maybe they wanted to have this parallel with the flash forwards, and that's why they're doing it. I don't really like this. It doesn't really feel like it's lining up. I wouldn't be too bad with it if Dante was still alive, but the fact that Dante has now been killed by Emeco and she's now taken his place, I don't really like that. And given the fact that based on the synopsis for the season finale, it seems like that, you know, Emeco is staying in that big bad position right until the end of the season. So I don't like this. I'm not going to lie about it. I think it's a bad decision. I think it's a bad character turn. I don't think it's what the writers had always intended, but if they could pull it off, then I'll give it to them. But as it stands right now, looking forward, I don't like it. And the episode ends with Emeco basically blowing the whole of the building that they were all in, and now all of Team Arrow are trapped inside of this building, and Oliver in particular has gone missing. So the whole of the next episode, based on the trailer, looks like it's going to have Team Arrow, specifically Felicity and Roy, looking for Oliver. So, you know, I like this. This is going to be interesting. Obviously, we know Oliver's not going to die in this situation. Most likely, Oliver's going to die in Crisis. But other than that, just having Team Arrow trapped, it was a nice little cliffhanger to kind of keep us going until next week. Overall, I like this episode of Arrow. Like I said, I know a lot of people didn't. The only thing I really didn't like is officially making Emeco the big bad. I don't like that at all. But other than that, I actually really enjoyed the true crime narrative style of storytelling that this episode undertook, and also just bringing Roy back into the present day is something that I've been waiting for all season. Given the fact that Colton Haynes is supposed to be a series regular this season, it's just not true because he's barely been in this season. So, you know, to finally have him back in the present day, he's going to be in the rest of the episodes for the, you know, the rest of the season, even though we've only got 2 episodes left. So, you know, not that that's saying much, but hopefully this is a good hint that we will see him as a series regular in season 8 as well. But I really like this episode overall. I enjoyed it. Like I say, a couple of things that were a little bit iffy with me, but other than those, I did enjoy it, and getting some explanation on Roy as well in the flash forwards was appreciated. And overall, I thought this was a decent episode. So thank you guys for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. It'll help me out a lot. And share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV, and get them to join the community. And as always, guys, please subscribe for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Arrow. And with all that said, guys, hope to see you again in my next video.